Hello everyone and welcome back to Weston the Historian. Today I will actually be reading from an article I wrote for Substack. So if you're interested, I do have my Substack in the description of this video. But today it's literally just me reading from an article that I wrote for Substack. So without further ado, here it is. For years, I've wanted to speak multiple languages. It has always enticed me, and I see it as a way of connecting with history and learning about other cultures to a much greater degree. I have tried and failed to learn new languages, though recently I have set out to learn German and French. In the original article I say Italian, but I recently decided to do French instead. I've only dabbled in it thus far. However, I have now formulated a detailed plan for how I will learn both German and French languages and any others I may try my hand at in the future. In this article, I will lay out my reasoning for learning another language and then explain my plan. I am not a language expert, but I hope that this article can provide some helpful information on learning another language and that some insight may be gained from my experiences in this endeavor. So first of all, why learn another language? Why should I? What is the value? Everyone else speaks English, and besides, Google Translate is a thing now. I believe that there's a flaw to this sort of mindset. For one, I think that is selfish and just lazy. Every culture has a unique language or dialect of another language, and it is arrogant to expect everyone else in the world to accommodate you by learning your language and using your language within their own borders. Instead of putting in any work to understanding another language, you're relying on others to put in all the work to understand your language. Many Americans specifically are unsurprisingly frustrated when people who are traveling or even living in America can't even speak English, and yet many of these same people are shocked when, say, French citizens become irritated about them not speaking French while in France. Furthermore, as you start learning another language, you begin to learn and understand another culture. Languages show the way another group of people communicate and think, and to understand this is the basis of understanding them as a whole. Another good reason to learn multiple languages is that, traditionally speaking, the practice of speaking multiple languages is common both in and out of the intellectual world. Most people in the world at least have some understanding of another language besides their own. Historically, the upper class in almost every society would differentiate themselves by speaking in a language other than that of the common folk. For some examples, the Roman aristocracy spoke Greek, the English king and nobility spoke French for centuries, and the Roman Catholic Church would often, and still does, use Latin for official documents. In the early days of the American Republic, some of the founding fathers believed that the official languages of the American government should be Greek, Latin, and French. Charles V, the 16th century ruler of various kingdoms and empires in other lands in Europe, spoke French, Flemish, German, Castilian Spanish, Italian, and possibly Latin, leading to a humorous quote which is often attributed to him that he almost certainly did not really say. According to some people, he said, "I speak Spanish to God, Italian to women, French to men, and German to my horse." Outside of the historical significance of learning other languages, the practice also has proven to be beneficial to your biological mind. Viorica Marian, PhD, and Anthony Shook write that being bilingual can have tangible practical benefits. The improvements in cognitive and sensory processing driven by bilingual experience may help a bilingual person to better process information in the environment, leading to a clear signal for learning. Finally, learning a new language is incredibly humbling. Beginning to learn German and French has taught me that I will never know everything, and that there is always something new I can learn. Maybe I do know a lot about this or that subject, but there's thousands of languages out there that I'll never even dream of being able to master. So, how should one go about learning another language? The most important thing to remember regarding learning a new language is that immersion is extremely effective. Consuming the language by hearing it and seeing it on a daily basis will make it feel more natural to you. You'll hear words you already know and you'll remember them. You'll hear words you don't already know and you will learn them. The flow of speaking and writing in your desired language will come to you over time. If you constantly read grammar and phrase books, you'll get nowhere. If you read books in your target language, you'll advance more quickly. Additionally, watching foreign television can be helpful. Allow yourself to hear and make sense of the other language and try your best to remember certain words and phrases. Obviously, on your first day, you can't just jump straight into reading the Old Testament in Hebrew or meditations in Latin, though. In order to start learning a new language, you have to ease yourself into it. As I already mentioned, you can't immediately start with books that are hundreds of pages long and use complicated grammar to learn a language. No, you have to start with something simple, and as time goes on, take on more complex materials to immerse yourself and learn. This is exactly how children learn their first language, and this is how you should too. Using a language learning app or a simple phrase book can help you with memorization and the technicalities, but these used alongside your immersive learning instead of being but these should be used alongside your immersive learning instead of being totally relied on. One important thing I've learned from trying and failing to learn a language over and over again is that once you start, you need to ignore the how to learn a language content. Once you create a plan, you need to put it into action and stick to it. Listening to other plans that are contrary to your own is completely counterproductive and a waste of time, and it can even be harmful. I used to pick up on a language, then I would watch a random video giving advice on learning languages, and suddenly I realized my plan was missing one tiny detail and I would just scrap the whole plan altogether. This is obviously not good if you're seriously trying to learn a new language. You need one plan and you need to commit to it. To give an example of what it looks like putting all this into action, I will tell you what I have already done and what I plan on doing with German specifically. Recently, I started to ease myself back in. I say back in because I've tried to learn the language time and time again to no avail by using Duolingo, Drops, and Speakly. I've heard a lot of the language learning gurus criticize Duolingo for not being a good source, but this criticism is more pointed towards people who use Duolingo exclusively. So long as you use more than one source, Duolingo is a great way to review words you already know and hammer them into your brain. Drops and Speakly also serve very similar purposes, although Speakly is probably the best out of these three as it gives you these words in context. Using all three of these sources has helped me to ease my way back into the language and has proven quite effective. I've only been using these three sources to learn for a little over a week and I'm already confident that I could start a very brief conversation in German. Alongside that, I've been listening to German music for much longer than I've been committed to actually learning the language. Years ago, I used to listen to a lot of German folk songs. When I finally decided to try and pick up the language, I found that I had little to no difficulty in pronouncing words, even the more complex ones, as my active consumption of German music led to a greater understanding of pronunciation rules in the language. I still remember some fairly random words from listening to German music, such as Heilige meaning holy and Haselnuss meaning hazelnut. This effect is common among those who do not speak English as their first language, as they often watch English-speaking, typically American TV, and listen to music in English and pick up on words and phrases without even trying. You can do this yourself for other languages. As I continue my German journey, I hope to find some magazines or kids' books in German. Both magazines and kids' books are commonly recommended by language learners, as they use simpler language and lots of imagery, helping you to remember words more easily by associating them with visuals. Down the line, I'll also try to have a full conversation in German with a native speaker as often as I can. One of my close friends is fluent in German, so finding someone to talk to in German won't be super difficult. French is a different story. I've heard great things about apps and websites such as Italki, HelloTalk, and Tandem, but I myself have no experience with any of them, so I can't really say anything. Going back to German, I then hope to start reading more complex short stories and articles, abandoning the kids' books when I can. Conveniently enough, Wikipedia has alternatives to almost every article on the site in another language. Eventually, I want to set my phone and computer in German. This will be difficult to adapt to, but it is an effective way of immersing yourself into a language, as it exposes you to your desired language even when you're too lazy to actively practice and study it. After this, I will start watching TV shows and movies in German, both shows and movies I've already seen dubbed in German, as well as shows originally set in German. When I've advanced enough, I will try to read entire books in German, especially ones in which German was the original language. I believe that when you read a piece of text in its original form, some meaning that was lost in translation can be revealed to you. I hope that, at some point, my knowledge in German will be strong enough that I can read the works of Nietzsche, Goethe, Junger in their original text, but I expect that to be a long time coming. I haven't decided a specific spot in my timeline when I want to do this, but at some point I will try to start reading poetry in German. The great thing about poetry is that it can introduce you to figurative language that only makes sense in the writer's language. If you translated a German poem into English word for word, it would make very little sense to the average English speaker, as it would require a strong understanding of German figurative language. Thus, I think reading poetry in German will also be a helpful way for me to continue learning not only the language, but about the culture at large. With this method, I will try to start from a very simple base and slowly build up to a more complex understanding. All the while, I will have deeper conversations in my desired language until it just comes naturally to me. I hope to write a follow-up article on my progress after a few months of using this plan. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to coming back with new thoughts and experiences on this subject. Goodbye, everyone, and thank you for watching.